The war no one could win. The Xelvari War had raged across the void for a decade, leaving ruin in its wake. Entire planets lay in smoldering wreckage, their once thriving civilizations reduced to mere whispers in the cosmic winds. The United Terran Coalition, UTC, had fought fiercely, standing alongside the Galactic Federation against the Xelvari Dominion, a ruthless empire of biomechanical warriors with technology centuries beyond that of any other species. But despite humanity's defiance, the war was turning into a slow, inevitable defeat. The Federation's fleets had been methodically dismantled, its leaders forced into desperate retreats. The Xelvari, immune to traditional espionage and resistant to direct assaults, seemed unstoppable. They could cloak entire armadas, infiltrate high-command communications, and adapt their battle tactics in real time. Every time the Federation thought it had a breakthrough, the Xelvari adapted, countered, and crushed their forces. The only advantage humanity had was its sheer refusal to surrender. But defiance wasn't enough to win a war. And then came the Crucible, the final stand of the Federation. It was here, at the edge of known space, that humanity's most desperate gamble was about to unfold. A ship too small to matter. While massive war fleets clashed in the Crucible sector, while dreadnoughts and battlecruisers exchanged devastating energy barrages that melted through reinforced hulls, one tiny, seemingly insignificant vessel was preparing for what could be the mission that turned the tide. The UTC Wraith, a scout corvette barely the size of a civilian transport, sat hidden in the wreckage of a shattered Federation battleship, its stealth plating flickering like a chameleon against the debris field. Inside, its small but elite crew prepared for a mission that no one expected to succeed. Captain Callum Rourke stood at the command console, staring at the holo map of the battlefield. He had seen war, too much of it. His once sharp uniform was faded, his expression hardened by years of watching good people die for a war that refused to end. Lieutenant Aria Solano, his tactical officer, adjusted the sensor calibration. Her voice was clipped, professional, but there was a spark of excitement beneath her calm exterior. The Xelvari fleet is operating in a tight-net formation, exactly as predicted. They think they're untouchable. Callum smirked. They're not. At the engineering console, Chief Desmond Vance ran one last diagnostic on the ship's experimental drive. "Hypercloak is stable," he muttered. "For now. I still think we're insane for this." "Insane?" Aria scoffed. "No. Bold." The Wraith was unlike any ship in the fleet. It wasn't built for firepower or armor. It was built for speed and deception. It was the only vessel in existence equipped with a prototype hypercloak, an advanced stealth system that rendered the ship invisible, not just to sensors, but even to warp space detection. On paper, the Xelvari should never see them coming. In reality, no one knew if the hypercloak would even work under battlefield conditions. "Remind me again," Desmond said, rubbing his temples. "What exactly is our plan? Because sneak into the enemy's heart and hope we don't die doesn't sound very reassuring." Callum's eyes gleamed. "We're doing what no one else has even dared to attempt." He tapped the holomap, zooming in on a single point deep inside enemy territory, a fortress-like station surrounded by an armada of Xelvari warships. The Dominion's central command hub. "We're going to steal their war plans." Silence fell over the bridge. Aria was the first to break it. "I love it." Desmond groaned. "I knew you'd say that. A mission of madness." For years, the Federation had been fighting blind. The Xelvari were too fast, too coordinated, too good at anticipating every counterattack. The war had only lasted this long because of human adaptability and sheer stubbornness, but those weren't enough anymore. If the Wraith could slip past the Dominion's unbreakable defenses and infiltrate the command hub, they could extract data on enemy fleet movements, weaknesses, and deployment schedules. With that knowledge, the Federation could finally stop reacting and start winning. It was a suicide mission. But if they failed, humanity would fall. Callum knew the risks. He also knew the Federation High Command had already written them off. He activated the comms. All crew, final checks. Once we go dark, there's no turning back. The moment of no return. As the Federation fleet burned in the Crucible sector, the Wraith engaged its hypercloak. For a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a shadow in the dark, it vanished. Not even a trace remained. The Xelvari, masters of detection and counterintelligence, never saw them leave. Inside the cockpit, Arya let out a slow breath. It worked. Desmond stared at the scanner, dumbfounded. We're gone. No energy signature, no mass readings. Hell, even our heat output is dispersed. We're actually ghosts. Callum nodded. Good, because we're heading straight for the Lion's Den. Aboard the Xelvari warfront. In the heart of the enemy fleet, aboard the command hub Nixar Prime, a Xelvari strategist named Varek Kal observed the battlefield with cold efficiency. His species had never been bested in tactics, and today would be no different. He turned his sharp, elongated gaze toward the unfolding battle. The Federation's last defenses will crumble in hours. The war was nearly won. What he didn't know, what none of them could have possibly known, was that right at that very moment, a single human ship had just passed through their defenses completely undetected. The Wraith was already inside the most secure facility in the entire Dominion, and no one had any idea. The ghost in the machine. The Wraith drifted like a whisper through the cold abyss of space, its hull as black as the void itself. It had slipped past the Xelvari Dominion's warfront, bypassing thousands of enemy vessels, security grids, and patrol beacons, completely undetected. It should have been impossible. Yet here they were. Inside the most heavily fortified sector of the Xelvari Empire, the Dominion's command hub, Nixar Prime, loomed ahead, an enormous construct of shimmering obsidian metal, latticed with glowing red energy conduits. It was a fortress among fortresses, a citadel that had never been breached in the history of the war. Until now. Inside the cockpit of the Wraith, Captain Callum Rourke sat tense at the command console, staring at the monstrous structure on the view screen. "That's one hell of a target," murmured Lieutenant Arya Solano, her eyes scanning the fortress. "And one hell of a death trap," added Chief Engineer Desmond Vance, fidgeting in his seat. "I still think we should have turned around 20 jumps ago." Callum smirked. Too late for second thoughts. We're already in. They had one shot to make this work. One chance to steal the war plans that could cripple the Xelvari and turn the tide of the war. If they were caught, they wouldn't be taken prisoner. They would simply cease to exist. A fortress without weakness. As the Wraith maneuvered toward the station, Arya worked furiously at her terminal. "We've tapped into the station's perimeter network," she said, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "But their encryption is..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "This is next level. We're talking AI-driven countermeasures that evolve in real time." Desmond exhaled sharply. "We can't crack it." Arya smirked. "Didn't say that." She entered a final command, and the screen flickered. Then, slowly, a small gap in the station's outer defense grid appeared. A vulnerability so minuscule that only a ship the size of the Wraith could slip through undetected. Desmond let out a low whistle. That's impressive." Arya grinned. "Damn right it is." Callum nodded, his mind working through the next steps. "All right, we take the window. No hesitation. Get us inside." The Wraith glided forward, maneuvering toward the dark, gaping maw of one of Nixar Prime's docking shafts. Unlike traditional stations, the Xelvari didn't have airlocks or docking clamps. Their technology was organic, a living, shifting machine that could reshape itself at will. They weren't just entering a structure. They were entering a living thing. Inside the beast. The moment the Wraith entered the station's docking bay, the walls shifted. The entire structure reacted to their presence, the metal pulsing faintly, like the breath of a sleeping giant. No pressure, But I feel like we just flew into the belly of a monster, Desmond muttered. Callum ignored him, focused on the mission. Area. Status. No alarms. No security response. Either they haven't detected us, or they're waiting. Neither answer was comforting. The ship touched down silently, landing in a docking alcove where maintenance drones drifted between pulsating machinery. The bay was empty. No Xelvari in sight. Callum unstrapped himself from the command chair. Suit up. We're moving. The infiltration begins. The boarding ramp hissed open, and 4 figures stepped into the dimly lit docking bay. Callum, Area, Desmond, and Corporal Elias Rook, their security officer. All were clad in adaptive infiltration suits, their forms blending into the station's eerie, shifting interior. Desmond activated his scanner, frowning at the results. The walls are made of some kind of hybrid material. Part metal, part something else. It's almost organic. Living architecture, Area murmured. That Xelvari don't build stations. They grow them. Callum glanced at the pulsating walls and the strange, bioluminescent veins coursing through the ceiling. Let's just hope it doesn't decide to digest us. They moved in silent formation, heading toward their target, the station's primary data core. If their intelligence was correct, the Xelvari command hub stored all fleet movements, tactical data, and strategic plans within an isolated, non-networked vault. They had to get in, download everything, and get out before the station realized what was happening. Easier said than done. The first obstacle. They made it through the first 2 corridors without resistance. The halls were eerily silent, the walls breathing softly like a sleeping predator. Then the silence broke. A distant chime echoed through the corridors, followed by a low guttural vibration. Elias raised his weapon. What was that? Desmond checked his scanner, his face turning pale. Motion. A lot of it. Coming fast. The lights above them flared red. Callum didn't hesitate. Move. Now. They sprinted down the corridor as the walls shifted, closing behind them like a collapsing throat. From the far end of the hall, something inhuman emerged. A Xelvari Guardian. Its exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian, its 6 limbs twisting unnaturally as it crawled toward them with terrifying speed. Area cursed. It's already adapting to us. Elias fired first, his pulse rifle unleashing a volley of high-energy rounds. The shots shattered against the Guardian's armor, barely slowing it down. Desmond yanked a detonation charge from his belt. Try dodging this, you freak. He tossed it forward. The explosion rocked the corridor, sending fire and smoke billowing out. The Guardian shrieked, its body twisting in pain, but it wasn't dead. It was evolving. The burned sections of its exoskeleton began to heal, its form reshaping, reinforcing against the very weapon that had just harmed it. Area paled. It's learning. Callum gritted his teeth. Then we don't give it time to finish. He pointed ahead. Run. The team broke into a sprint, racing toward the data core as alarms flared across the station. They were inside. The station knew they were here. And now, it was waking up. The heart of the enemy. The Wraith's crew sprinted down the shifting corridors of Nixar Prime, their boots barely making a sound against the pulsating, semi-organic floors. Behind them, the Xelvari Guardian was reforming, adapting. Its exoskeletal plates fused together, reshaping into something stronger. The station wasn't just alert to their presence. It was learning from them. Callum led the charge, his pulse rifle at the ready, his mind racing through contingencies. They had minutes, if that, before the entire station reacted. And they still had to reach the data core. How far? He barked. Area didn't look up from her wrist console. 2 levels down, a few hundred meters forward. If we keep moving, we'll. The walls groaned. Ahead of them, the corridor began to change, twisting, bending as if the station itself was trying to trap them. Shit. Move. Move, Callum yelled. The team lunged forward, just as the walls behind them sealed shut, leaving them with no way back. The Xelvari weren't just chasing them anymore. They were hurting them. The enemy knows. As they ran, the lights changed, shifting from deep crimson to a sickly green. A signal. A message. Desmond, still gripping his plasma detonator, glanced at Callum. They know where we're going. Callum clenched his jaw. Then we make them regret it. They reached an intersection, where a thin bridge extended over what looked like a vast, open chasm of machinery, a pulsing network of conduits stretching into the station's depths. Aria's eyes flicked between her scanner and the chasm below. That's the core power relay. It's what keeps this place running. Desmond exhaled sharply. And let me guess, we have to cross it. Callum was already moving. We're not turning back. They stepped onto the bridge, moving fast, trying not to look down. And that's when the Guardians attacked. The Xelvari shrieked in frustration as they were cut off. Elias smirked. I hope they can't jump. As if on cue, one of them did. The Guardian leaped across the gap, landing on the other side with a sickening crunch. Callum turned. Drop it. Their combined gunfire tore through its carapace, sending it screeching over the edge, plunging into the station's depths below. Silence. Then, Desmond let out a shaky breath. I hate this place. We're not done yet, Callum reminded them. They had reached the final chamber. The data core. The massive doors to the Nixer Prime's core loomed ahead, thick, black, reinforced with Xelvari biotech plating. No terminals, no controls, just an impenetrable wall. Aria frowned. There's no interface, no way in. Desmond took a step forward, glancing at the structure. Then how do they access it? Elias knelt beside the door, his gloved hand brushing against the bioluminescent veins running across its surface. I think it's DNA locked. Callum narrowed his eyes. Meaning? Aria bit her lip. Meaning it only opens for the Xelvari. Silence. Desmond looked at the blood-stained ground, then at the shattered Guardian corpses behind them. Well, that's convenient. Elias grimaced. You want me to? We don't have time for debates, Callum interrupted. Elias sighed, stepping forward. He ripped one of the Xelvari's severed arms from its broken body, then pressed it against the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the walls shuddered, a deep, guttural groan resonating through the chamber. The veins pulsed brighter, and the door peeled apart, splitting open like the maw of a creature exhaling a breath of stale alien air. Desmond gagged. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Callum stepped forward. Move in. Now. The ghost in the system. The data core was not what they expected. It was not a computer. It was alive. The chamber stretched into a vault of pulsating organic structures, each one throbbing like a living brain. Strange, alien tendrils of biomachinery coiled around data nodes, processing information in ways no human mind could comprehend. Aria's voice was a whisper. They don't just use computers. They grow them. Callum clenched his fists. Can we extract the data? Aria hesitated. If I link our system, the Xelvari might detect us immediately. Callum didn't flinch. Then we do it fast. Aria moved forward, carefully placing a data spike against the nearest node. It latched on like a parasite, drilling into the biostructure, siphoning its information. The organic walls trembled. Elias raised his rifle. I think it does 'em like that. The room came alive. The walls shifted violently, the pulsating core glowing brighter. A deep alien voice hissed through the chamber, vibrating through their bones. Into reusation, DETCTE. Aw hell, Desmond groaned. The station had woken up. Aria's screen flashed green. I've got it. We have the data. Callum spun toward the exit. Then we run. The crew bolted back through the opening, just as Nixer Prime roared to life around them. That Xelvari weren't just aware of them now. They were coming. And this time, they weren't going to let them leave.